Hidden within the oldest stories ever told is a secret that has been overlooked for millennia. The Greek gods, from Zeus to Hera, were not just flawed, they were programmed for destruction. We've always dismissed their cruelty as ancient storytelling, but a groundbreaking AI project just analyzed the entire library of Greek mythology. It found a repeating code, a brutal algorithm for maintaining power that passed from one generation to the next. This isn't just about angry gods. This is about a terrifying, unbreakable cycle, and we are about to reveal exactly how it worked, step by step. And it all begins with a father so terrified of his children, he would do the unthinkable. You see, long before Zeus and the Olympians, the universe was ruled by the Titans. Their king, Kronos, was the most powerful being in existence. But he was haunted by a secret, a prophecy. His own mother, Gaia, had warned him that one of his children would rise up and overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his own father. But how he overthrew him is a story soaked in blood. Now, get this. Kronos' father, Uranos, was a tyrant who imprisoned his own children deep within the earth. To stop him, Kronos took a jagged sickle and committed an act of unbelievable violence against his father, seizing the throne for himself. But the fear of that prophecy, the fear of history repeating itself, twisted him into something even worse. You think seizing the throne was bad? What he did next is the stuff of nightmares. So, as his wife Rhea gave birth to their children, one by one, Kronos did the unthinkable. He took his newborn babies, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, and he swallowed them whole. He turned his own stomach into a living prison to prevent the prophecy from ever coming true. He chose to become a monster to stop a monster from being born, but he missed one, and that single mistake would cost him everything. But here's the thing about fate in Greek mythology. The more you try to escape it, the faster it catches up to you. Rhea, heartbroken, managed to hide her sixth child, Zeus. She tricked Kronos into swallowing a rock, wrapped in blankets instead. Zeus was raised in secret, growing stronger every day, fueled by the story of his imprisoned siblings, and his plan for revenge would shake the very foundations of the cosmos. When he was ready, he returned not just for revenge, but for liberation. He tricked his father into drinking a potion that forced him to regurgitate the 5 children he had consumed. They emerged not as infants, but as fully grown, powerful gods, armed and ready for war. The decade-long battle that followed, the Titanomachy, was so violent it was said to have shaken the foundations of the cosmos. But what comes after victory can be far more terrifying than the war itself. Zeus won. He cast his father and the other titans into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld. He had defeated the monster, but replacing one tyrant with another only made the cycle of terror worse. With Kronos gone, Zeus became the undisputed king of the gods. He was supposed to be a savior, a bringer of order and justice. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The same paranoia that drove his father to devour his children now festered in Zeus's heart. He saw threats and rivals everywhere, and his methods for dealing with them were surgically cruel. Just look at what he did to the one who tried to help humanity. Take Prometheus, the titan who dared to give fire, knowledge, and enlightenment to humanity. To Zeus, this was an act of rebellion, so he devised a punishment meant to last for eternity. He had Prometheus chained to a mountain, where every single day a giant eagle would fly down and eat his liver. Every night, the liver would grow back, only for the agony to begin again at sunrise. It was a masterpiece of perpetual torture, and his cruelty wasn't reserved for his enemies. It extended to everyone. Zeus's infamous affairs weren't just acts of lust, they were a strategy. By fathering countless demigods and nymphs, he spread his influence across the mortal world, creating a web of loyalty and power that no one could challenge. But if anyone rejected him, his wrath was absolute. And if you thought he was cruel to his enemies, wait until you see what he did to the women who loved him. When the mortal princess Semele asked to see him in his true divine form, he knew it would destroy her. But to prove a point, he did it anyway, and she was instantly incinerated by his glory. He wasn't just a ruler, he was a cosmic dictator who used fear and violence to maintain absolute control. But his greatest act of cruelty was reserved for his own wife, and it mirrors his father's crimes in the most twisted way possible. But the real kicker is what happened when he faced the same prophecy as his father. He was told that his first wife, Metis, would bear a son who would one day overthrow him. Did he try to find another way? He repeated the sins of his father, but with a horrifying twist. He tricked Metis into turning into a fly, and then he swallowed her whole. He thought he had solved the problem, but he didn't destroy the prophecy, he absorbed it, and the result was explosive. Instead, Metis gave birth to their child, Athena, inside his own head. The pain was so immense, he screamed in agony until another god split his skull open with an axe. And from the wound, Athena sprang forth, fully grown and clad in armor. He had absorbed his problem, and in doing so, made it a permanent part of himself. His greatest fear wasn't another man plotting against him, it was born from within his own family. And if you think the king was a monster, the queen was about to perfect the art of suffering. If Zeus was the god of brute force and overt tyranny, his wife and sister Hera was the master of something far more insidious: psychological torture. As the goddess of marriage and family, every one of Zeus's affairs was a direct insult to her domain. But she was powerless to stop her husband, the most powerful being in the universe. So she did the next best thing. She went after his lovers and their children with a creativity that was truly terrifying. Her revenge was never quick. It was designed to last a lifetime. What many overlook is that Hera never punished them with a simple thunderbolt. Her revenge was always poetic, drawn out, and deeply personal. When she discovered Leto was pregnant with Zeus's children, Apollo and Artemis, Hera cursed her so that she couldn't give birth on any solid land on Earth. She forced a pregnant woman to wander the entire world in agony, searching for a place to deliver her children. Eventually, Leto found a floating island, the only place the curse couldn't reach. Then there was Io, another of Zeus's conquests. Hera didn't just take her out. She turned her into a cow and sent a vicious gadfly to sting her, relentlessly, forever. The fly chased Io across continents, driving her to the brink of madness in a never-ending pilgrimage of pain. But all of that was just practice for her true masterpiece of cruelty, the most famous hero in all of Greece. But her most infamous target was Heracles, Zeus's most famous illegitimate son. Her hatred for him was a lifelong obsession. She sent 2 serpents to his crib when he was just an infant. When that failed, she waited. Years later, when Heracles was a happy husband and father, she inflicted him with a temporary madness so severe that he ended the lives of his own wife and children. His legendary 12 labors, that was his penance for a crime she made him commit. She didn't just want him gone, she wanted him to suffer, to be broken by guilt and grief for the rest of his life. That was her signature. She wouldn't just end you, she would dismantle your entire world, piece by painful piece. Zeus ruled the cosmos, but Hera ruled the realm of human suffering. And yet, there was something far worse that created them both. But even their combined brutality paled in comparison to the primordial darkness that created everything. This is where it all comes together. For centuries, we've seen these as disconnected stories of a dysfunctional divine family. But the recent AI analysis revealed something else entirely. After processing thousands of myths, hymns, and ancient plays, it identified a core algorithm, a brutality code every generation of Greek gods followed. It wasn't random, it was a system. The AI termed it the law of violent succession. And once you understand this law, you will never see the Greek gods the same way again. You see, the first gods, the primordials, were beings of pure chaos and darkness. Nyx, the goddess of night, was born from the void. She wasn't just a deity, she was the personification of the unknown, the terrifying emptiness from which all things came. She gave birth to figures like Thanatos, Death, and the Keres, spirits of violent slaughter. The foundation of this universe wasn't light and order, it was fear and entropy. And this is the code the AI found. Each successive generation of gods had to become more sophisticated in its cruelty to maintain power. Let's break down the code level by horrifying level. The primal age of power was defined by Kronos, the titan who ruled through brute physical violence. His method was born of a singular gnawing fear, the prophecy of his own overthrow. He literally consumed his rivals, his own children, in an act of horrific, desperate preservation. It was a simple, direct, and ultimately unsophisticated strategy. He sought to control the future by devouring it before it could be born. This was cruelty in its most elemental form, a visceral, unthinking reaction to a perceived threat. There was no ideology, no grand design, only the cannibalistic impulse of a tyrant trying to physically annihilate his destiny. And because it was so simple, so reliant on pure physical dominance, it was ultimately easy to overcome. One child, hidden away, was all it took to unravel his reign of terror. But the god who came next learned from these mistakes, and his system of control was far more advanced. Then came Zeus. He had witnessed his father's crude methods and learned from his mistakes. He understood that true lasting power could not be maintained by simply literally eating your problems. He ushered in a new era of control. He didn't just use physical force, he used politics, fear, psychological warfare, and the invention of eternal punishments. His cruelty was systematic. Consider Prometheus, chained to a rock, his liver devoured by an eagle for eternity, or Sisyphus, forever pushing his boulder, and Tantalus, forever denied sustenance. These weren't acts of simple retribution. They were theatrical advertisements for his authority, designed to be witnessed and feared by gods and mortals alike. He built a regime, an intricate system of alliances, laws, and consequences designed to control not just the body, but the mind and the will. It was a more advanced form of tyranny, one that established an order where rebellion was not only crushed, but rendered unthinkable through the spectacle of unending torment. Yet the evolution did not stop there, because the most painful prisons are not physical. You then have Hera, queen of the gods. Unable to wield the overt cosmic power of Zeus, she perfected a different, more insidious form of control, emotional and psychological torment. She could not unseat her husband, so she targeted what he created and what he loved. Her methods were indirect, deeply personal, and designed to inflict a kind of suffering that lasted longer than any physical wound. Look at her relentless persecution of Heracles, a lifelong campaign of madness and tragedy, or her curse upon Leto, forcing her to wander the earth, denied a place to give birth. Hera's cruelty was the weapon of the politically constrained, a masterclass in how to wage war through proxies, through family, and through the slow, corrosive acid of psychological affliction. She turned love into a liability and lineage into a curse. And when you put all three generations together, the pattern becomes terrifyingly clear. The real horror that isn't any single god or their individual atrocities. It's the chillingly clear pattern of their collective history. The myths weren't just disconnected stories, they were a roadmap, a blueprint showing how the very nature of cruelty evolves to maintain power. It begins with a simple, brutal act of violence and spirals with each generation into a complex and terrifying system of psychological control and perpetual, institutionalized torment. The gods weren't just a dysfunctional family, they were a perfect case study in the ever-escalating brutality required to seize and hold dominion. So, where does that leave us? Are these just cautionary tales scribbled down by ancient storytellers to explain the world around them? Or is there something more profound, more unsettling woven into these narratives? Could a pattern that perfect, that reflective of the arc of human history from tribal chieftains to sprawling empires, have just appeared overnight in a collection of myths? Are we just living in another myth, waiting for our own gods to fall? Hit like and subscribe if you want more secrets revealed.